Jason Kenney's days as leader of the United Conservative Party may be numbered, and the cracks are really starting to show. His team is in full attack mode, which doesn't give me an impression of confidence that he has this one in the bag. Enter Issues Manager of the Premier's Issues Management Office, Chad Hallman, who has taken an unpaid leave of absence to not only campaign for Kenney, but to be a bulldog against anyone who doesn't agree with our current leader. Hallman recently took to Twitter to go after political opponents and grassroots members, calling them the fringe who hold personal grudges and fringe views that want to take the party in an extreme direction. All UCP members to take a hard look at the motivations behind the grassroots effort to remove Jason Kenney and the characters involved. Could it be personal grudges and a desire to take the party in an extremist direction? Mainstream conservatism, please. A significant amount of the people working against the Premier haven't even been members of the UCP before 2019 too. Many actively supported independents, WIPA, Wexit, etc. The efforts to remove Jason Kenney as leader are largely driven by personal grudges and fringe views. Hildebrandt, Strankman, Beasley, now Barnes and Lowen, this bizarre obsession with fringe politics is not reflective of mainstream Albertans. One of the reasons it's important to support Jason Kenney, not to turn the Alberta UCP over to the fringe. Essentially, if you don't agree with Kenney, you are part of the fringe minority with unacceptable views, even though 60% people believe that Kenney should be removed as leader of the UCP, and he has the second lowest approval rating out of all the premiers in Canada. Now, I would consider myself a member of the grassroots. I bought Wild Rose membership back in 2015. I voted in the merger and I voted in the leadership. I didn't vote for Kenney. But does that make me a grassroots member with fringe views holding a personal grudge who wants to take the party in an extreme direction? I don't think so. With questions like this, I always felt that the best place to get answers is to go directly to the source. So I headed over to Hallman's Facebook, where he welcomes questions about his current campaign. One of my biggest rules is to always be respectful. Even though I strongly disagree with someone, you have a much better chance of getting a response that way. And for a while I was getting answers. Now, as to who exactly Hallman considers as fringe is basically any former Wild Rose member who has ever spoken out against Kenney, and those who have only held membership since 2019. Essentially, Hallman is completely dismissing the entire former Wild Rose party who held official opposition for the better half of a decade. Also dismisses new members when he should be applauding the fact that more and more people are getting involved politically. People have woken up to the fact that if you want to see change, you'd better get involved. Kenney knows he's in a fight for his political life right now. People on both sides of the spectrum are unhappy with his leadership, myself included. A lot of promises were made, and yes, many were kept, but a lot were broken, particularly with his handling of the pandemic. When a group held protests, he was either completely dismissive, saying that if they were his voter base, he wanted a new base, or he just had them thrown in jail. Then there was the vax passport issue, where in one breath, he says it would be unconstitutional and we would never ever see one in Alberta, and in another breath, he implements one. There are a lot of unhappy campers in terms of Kenney's COVID response. When I see someone in the Premier's office call all of those people fringe, I see the exact same old PC arrogance that we had had enough of once before. This bizarre obsession of calling anyone who doesn't agree with a certain politician fringe is just pathetic, but to call 60% of Albertans who are unhappy with Kenney is just silly. One could even go so far as to say that those who do still support Kenney are actually the fringe rather than the other way around. But in all fairness, Kenney was handed a no-win situation as Premier. The NDP left him with a fiscal and economic mess, and COVID made him walk a tightrope trying to please everybody. And he was never going to be able to make everybody happy. However, to close that divide and bring people on side, Hallman's condescending and immature attack on grassroots conservatives has the opposite effect. My grandma always used to say that you catch more flies with a jar full of honey than you do with a barrel full of vinegar. Using those same dirty tactics like calling an entire group of people you don't agree with grudge holders with fringe and extreme views is a pathetic attempt to bring people on side. Hallman thinks that he's doing Kenney any favors in retaining his premiership by mudslinging and going on a social media campaign calling us all names. He had better go back to the drawing board, because those unhappy with Kenney are now in the majority. That very fringe group that Hallman so hates very much is now the group that he is a part of.